by innovators to the development of societies across the globe. The day is also dedicated to increase people's awareness and understanding of intellectual property. FICCI is privileged to organize this webinar on the theme From Minds to the Market, IP Exploitation by MSMEs, which is in line with Wipo's focus for this World IP on the increasing importance of IP rights for small and medium businesses. As the voice of Indian industry, FICCI has been articulating its views and concerns over the years. Among its various activities, FICCI has been working intensively on creating an environment in India that understands and respects the value of intellectual property rights. And today, we are very privileged by the presence of several luminaries who would be addressing us on this important subject. To take the day's proceedings forward, may I now invite Mr. Narendra Sabharwal, who, as the chairman of FICCI IPR committee, has been guiding our programs and activities in the area of intellectual property rights, to deliver his formal welcome address. Mr. Sabharwal.
Sir, you need to unmute yourself, sir. You are mute.
Okay. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Fine, sir. Fine,
okay.
Sir.
So good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Rajendra Ratnu, Joint Secretary, DPIIT and Controller General of Patents, Designs and Trademarks, Government of India. Joint Secretary Raghavendra, if he is here, Ministry of Justice. Eminent panelists and experts from India and abroad. Deputy Secretary General FICCI, Mr. Arun Chawla. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, it is a great pleasure for me to extend a very warm welcome to all of you on the occasion of the World Intellectual Property Day 2021. I would like to greet and welcome Mr. Ratnu, Joint Secretary and Controller General, at today's webinar. We look forward to hearing from him the status of IPRs in India and the special measures taken to incentivize MSMEs to generate IP assets. As Dipankar has just said, the World IP Day is an occasion when we celebrate creativity and the contribution made by creators and innovators to the progress of societies across the globe. This year, the World Intellectual Property Organization has focused the IP Day on the theme of the role of small and medium-sized enterprises. And this forum provides us an opportunity to take a closer look at how India's creative and innovative MSMEs can increasingly exploit their intellectual assets to achieve commercial success and market leadership and contribute to the country's vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Intellectual property is a key asset for any business, which cuts across all industries and economic activities. Intellectual property, creativity, and innovation go hand in hand and reinforce each other. Intellectual property rights allow innovative entrepreneurs and enterprises to protect their inventions, new business ideas, designs, trademarks and brands, copyright and related rights, geographical indications, and plant breeders' rights, helping them to leverage these rights individually and together in a bundle for the benefit of their business ventures, competitiveness, profitability, and thereby also enhancing their market reach. WIPO Director General Mr. Darren Tang has aptly described MSMEs as the unsung heroes of the global economy and an engine for growth in the post-pandemic world. That's why World IP Day 2021 has the theme IP and SMEs, taking your ideas to the market. Globally, the small and medium-sized enterprises have been the driving force behind a large number of innovations. SMEs account for 90% of all companies worldwide and 70% of global employment. Successful SMEs across the world have been able to reinforce an idea to create a product that consumers wanted, utilized IP rights to protect it, and created value for their businesses. This is particularly true in the high-tech and export-oriented enterprises, the service sector, the enterprises in the digital economy, and other priority areas of the economy. The MSME sector in India contributes significantly to the country's GDP, employment, and exports. Rightly called the engine of India's economic growth, the sector is also recognized for its inventiveness and entrepreneurial acumen. Even during COVID-19 crisis, it has been heartening to see the many outstanding innovations in the health sector that emerged from this segment, ranging from research for vaccines and drugs to masks, sanitizers, sanitizing pumps, face shields, and testing equipment. These rapid innovations are an evidence of the innovative abilities of India's small and medium businesses in the face of socio-economic crisis precipitated by the pandemic and resource constraints. However, there are many such businesses the world over which are unaware of the intellectual assets that they possess and consequently fail to protect and develop them, thus missing out on the prospects to expand and grow. By and large, this scenario applies to a majority of India's small and medium businesses, which is primarily due to the low level of IPR awareness and skill set amongst them. This lack of understanding, especially in the backdrop of the growing incidence of counterfeiting and piracy, are threatening the innovative abilities and competitiveness of MSMEs and is costing them dearly. The Government of India has recognized this key potential of country's MSME sector and has initiated several support measures to strengthen and incentivize this very important economic segment. Indeed, the government must be complimented for the several programs and special schemes specially directed at promoting the IP culture among Indian MSMEs and the versatile startup sector, including the nationwide IPR awareness program the special financial packages, the reduction in fee for filing of applications, appointment of facilitators, setting up of IP facilitation centers, and the TISSCs with the help of WIPO that guide small businesses to adopt IP tools and technologies. These steps have had a very positive impact, which is reflected in the rising level of awareness about the significance of intellectual property in the sector, a growing trend in IP filings, by MSMEs and startups, enabling IPR-oriented enterprises to transform their inventive creations into market value and competitiveness. While such support measures should continue and indeed be enhanced, what is more important is that MSMEs must increasingly view IP protection as an investment to create IP assets rather than a cost. The smaller businesses must be encouraged and supported to increasingly adapt IP in business operations, especially considering the new and emerging technologies in the world. In short, they need to incorporate upfront an intellectual property strategy into their business plans. This IP strategy will holistically cover the whole area of IPRs, from ideation to protection to development and strategic utilization and exploitation of IP to generate IP assets. It will also include measures for avoiding infringement of IPRs and defense against such infringement. I am happy to inform that FICCI has been working intensively on building a strong IP ecosystem in India. In this context, FICCI has been privileged to work closely with the government and its various departments in many significant initiatives, including IPR awareness generation, capacity building, training and teaching, collaboration with enforcement agencies and judiciary, preparing IP toolkits for police and custom officials, organizing joint programs for industry on various IP-related issues. FICCI will continue to engage closely with India's MSME and startup sectors and intensify its efforts to enhance IP awareness and IP utilization among this extremely important economic sector. I'm sure that this webinar will serve as a useful platform for understanding the growing significance of intellectual property for Indian industry, including MSMEs, startups, and the informal sector. We are fortunate to have several eminent speakers from international organizations, IP offices from other countries, IP professionals and experts who would be addressing us today. I would like to specially recognize my colleague from WIPO, and I hope she is here at this time, Ms. Tamara Nanayakara, head of the SME divisions, and I am indeed happy to welcome her as she would be representing WIPO and also the new Director General in this webinar. May I wish all of you a very fruitful discussion in this webinar, even though these are very trying times, and I hope all of you would stay safe and protected. Thank you for your attention. Dipankar, would you continue from here, or shall I request Mr. Ratnu?
No, sir, let me do it, sir. I'm going to do it.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Savarwal. Thank you very much, sir, for your welcome address. where you highlighted some very significant points towards establishing a vibrant IP regime in the country and to foster increasing innovation and creativity in the days to come. The Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, DPIIT, the nodal department that coordinates and oversees implementation and future development of IPR in the country, has been taking many constructive initiatives and playing a major role in giving IP its due recognition, and in the process, substantially improving India's IPR regime. We are very privileged to have Mr. Rajendra Ratnu, Joint Secretary, DPIIT, and Controller General of Patents, Designs, and Trademarks with us today. May I now request Mr. Ratnu to kindly make his special address.
Thank you, Mr. Dipankar. Very good afternoon to everyone, and particularly Sri Narendra Sabharwal, very, very illustrious senior of mine, and it is indeed an honor to share a stage with him on IPRs. We look with a lot of expectation, and his contribution to the field of IPR is well known in the country, and we wish him a very good health and that he continues to serve us for many more years, not only in India but at the global level. And he gives us very valuable inputs. And in that capacity, he is also convener member of the IPR think tank for Government of India, and his valuable suggestions will always be given due consideration at the governmental level. Sir, we are privileged to have you in this discussion. Other members, Sri Arun Chawla ji, Ms. Tamara, other members of FICCI, Wipo, IP professionals, and all dignitaries, very good afternoon to all of you. When we come to the, this particular specific topic regarding the SME sector and the IP rights, it becomes all the more important when we talk of in the Indian context. Because Indian economy, if we see the growth engines of Indian economy, it is the SME sector. It is the SME sector which you'll find present from the biggest cities and metros to the smallest districts of the country. You'll find it across the geography of the country. You'll find it across the sectors in the economy. So it makes it all the more important for us to deliberate on this topic, which is highly relevant for India as well. Somebody can ask that what is the role, what is so special about IP, what is the important role it plays in SMEs? Just there are many professionals, but for the others that it is important to protect their innovative products and services. So IP gives them that leverage, that tool. At the same time, it also gives IP system also plays a role to increase visibility, attractiveness, the value of their products in the market. And it also distinguishes their businesses and products from their competitors. And it gives them an edge and advantage by which they can project their products much better way. And to access information and knowledge. And this information and knowledge can be related to technical know-how, or it may be related to their businesses. Same way, the IP systems also help them to avoid the risk of sometimes unknowingly using the third-party proprietary content. And once you are aware about your IP rights and you register it, that inadvertent error also is ruled out. And thereby, IP systems help in defending SMEs in the competitive space where the innovative products or processes or improved product and processes of SMEs can be protected by a patent right, or it can be by a way of a design, or it can be a trademark right, or it can be, if it is a traditional knowledge, if it is a craft or then the GIs come into play. So when we talk about the intellectual property, I'm talking in general about the gamut of the rights, and I'll come straight to the India's various IP applications and what are the initiatives taken by Government of India in terms of helping the SME sector when it comes to in the domain of IP rights. In 2014, the Patents Amendment Rules 2014, where the patent filing fees for the small enterprises was reduced by 50% as compared to the large entities. And further, in 2020, the amendment rules of 2020 have further reduced these fees by 80% in comparison to the large entities. In case of the designs, the design amendment rules of 2014, which brought down the design filing and processing fee for the small entities up to by 50% as compared to large entities. And in 2021, the design amendment rules of 2021, this particular fees, that is for design filing and processing fees, has been further reduced by 75% in comparison to the large entities. So which is a huge incentive for these smaller entities, where sometimes the whole thinking has been that the money should not become a barrier to bring them into the umbrella of these rules, and they should understand, and awareness is not sufficient. We have to go beyond awareness, and we have to make certain provisions by which we incentivize them in terms of monetary ways by which we can bring them into the fold. As a result, the present patent and design filing and processing fee for small entities are at par with the fees of individual applicants and startups. To encourage SMEs for adopting the better IPR strategies, this great initiative has been done by Government of India. In 2017, the Trademark Amendment Rules of 2017, where the trademark application fee for small enterprises was reduced to 50% as compared to others. So it is in the designs, trademarks and patent, in all the three fields we have reduced the fees. As Sabharwal sir had mentioned about technology and innovation support centers for SMEs in India, the 11 such centers have been established, and they are meant to support innovation in accessing, analyzing and using patent information. Wipo and DPIT, in this particular arena, Wipo and DPIT both are jointly fostering development of technology and innovation support centers. DPIT has further extended its SIP scheme meant for startups for IP application filed through TISCs, which was initially launched only for the startups, which has been now extended to SME sector. As a result, Office of Controller General is to reimburse the fee of IP facilitators used by applicants for filing their IP applications that is facilitated by technology and innovation support centers. There is another similar scheme by MSME department, which is for GIs, where entire fee of the attorney is borne by the government for entire, because any GI application, it is not less than a PhD work. And when it comes to the traditional knowledge, it is not a business house which is, steering the GIs. So in those areas also, Government of India has seized of the matter, and to protect that collective intellectual heritage which has been inherited from generation to generation, we have recognized the potential of the GIs also, and very actively we are engaged with various stakeholders, including the state governments, the artisans, the civil society, And we are trying to see that an ecosystem is created where the benefits of registering under GI is also known by people, understood by them, and at the same time, awareness about GI is also continuously generated. CPAM is an important organization within DPIIT, and through CPAM, a toolkit to guide Indian businesses, especially MSMEs and startup, was initiated, and a guide by name, a guide to protect trade secrets, was brought out, and this toolkit aims to guide Indian businesses, especially the SME sector and startups, regarding protection of trade secrets. So similarly, I'll not be repeating. I mean, when I say IP, it holds good that registration of IP, when it is whether intellectual property rights or it is industrial designs or whether it is the trademarks or it is the copyrights or geographic indications. These are all tools which in their own unique ways, they protect the businesses and they give them a edge and advantage by which they can exploit that advantage in terms of translation of that into their marketability, better protection, getting exclusive rights and other related components. So I would like to once again tell that Government of India is committed to take further, and I'll be very much keen to get feedback from FICCI about the outcome of today's workshop and the tangible suggestions which are coming out in terms of implementable ideas which are at the level of implementation, which we can directly ask our CG team to take care of, or CPAM. Those which require policy intervention also, we will be happy to examine those ideas, and we will also be very actively look forward to engage with FICCI and particularly seek the knowledge of this IP committee under chairmanship and co-chairmanship of Shri Narendra Sabharwal Sahab, whose wisdom and experience is well known by all of us, and we look forward to have a very close coordination and close interaction with FICCI's IPR division vertical, and we look forward to working very closely through FICCI with all the stakeholder in SME sector, and we will try to see that how we can transform the IP ecosystem of the country so that we can really and truly realize the growth potential of MSE, small and medium enterprises sector. Thanks once again for giving this opportunity, and I wish all the organizers are very, very best for this today's event, to have a very meaningful, very fruitful discourse, and to come up with a set of recommendations which can be considered by us all as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ratnu. Your observations bring confidence and assurance not only to the industry, but to the large multitude of IP stakeholders and the innovators. Thank you, sir, for being with us today. And we've taken note of your suggestions, and we'll be very happy to come back to you with whatever you've advised us to do. Thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come towards the end of a very inspiring opening session with enlightening addresses from Mr. Rajendra Ratnu and Mr. Narendra Sabharwal, may I now invite Ms. Vichi Malkhani, Co-Chair FICCI IPR Committee and Senior IP Counsel, Hindustan Unilever Limited, to give her concluding remarks. Ms. Malkhani.
Thank you, Dipankar. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Sabharwal, as always, for a great welcome address. You have aptly highlighted the role of intellectual property rights in aiding commercial success for all industries and especially MSMEs. Truly, MSMEs are the unsung heroes that have the potential to create great value for its business by leveraging IP. The Government of India's various initiatives and schemes for creating an IP-aware culture for MSMEs is laudable, and MSMEs should indeed take advantage of the same. You have also rightly stated that MSMEs should consider IP protection as an investment and incorporate IP strategy into their business plans to be future ready. It is also encouraging to know that FICCI continues to take pertinent steps to promote an IP conducive environment for our critical sectors. I would also like to thank Mr. Rajendra Ratnu for sparing time and delivering a fabulous keynote address, which was very encouraging, and for reiterating the importance of MSME sector, the relevance of IP to SMEs, and various means by which IP can be protected by all concerned. You have also alluded to various initiatives of the Government of India, including fee reductions for IP filings, especially for MSMEs, and that of the MSME department for protection of GIs. This is indeed encouraging, and I'm sure it will help all our small businesses to embrace an IP mindset. You also spoke about various toolkits, and I'm sure the participants will take full advantage of these tools for devising a robust IP strategy for their businesses. Thank you for these valuable insights. And I would also like to state that we are probably dealing with one of the worst catastrophe in the global history. Though these are trying times of unparalleled despair, the situation will eventually change. It is therefore imperative that MSMEs are ready to pursue their growth strategy by focusing on business opportunities and leveraging their assets, an important asset being IPR when situation changes. I'm confident that the panel discussions that follow hereafter will be of utmost importance and value to the participants who represent the MSME industry. I would also like to congratulate FICCI and Dipankar and his team for commemorating World IP Day by bringing us this much needed informative session. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malkani. Thank you so much for those concluding remarks. And we will next move on to the technical sessions now. The first of which is on the theme, converting ideas into business opportunities. And we are very privileged to have Mr. V.R. Raghavendra, Joint Secretary, Department of Justice, Ministry of Law and Justice, as the chair for this session. Mr. Raghavendra is also Mission Director for the National Mission for Justice Delivery. Earlier, he had been Joint Secretary, DIPP, and had held the additional charge of Director General of the National Productivity Council. He is the former Registrar of Copyrights and has played a key role in the introduction of amendments to the Copyright Act in 2012 and the Copyright Rules in 2013. He has made significant contribution to the two WIPO treaties, the Beijing Treaty on Audiovisual Performances 2012 and the Marrakesh Treaty 2013. He has also contributed in the revision of copyright legislations of Bhutan, Cambodia, Myanmar, and Nepal as a copyright expert. Before I invite Mr. Raghavendra to chair the session, I'm happy to inform that FICCI, in collaboration with Creative First and IPR Mentor, have put together a useful compendium for the creators in the media and the entertainment industry called Copyright 101. And Mr. Raghavendra has very kindly written a foreword for this handbook. So we are doubly privileged to have him here in our midst today. We are taking this World IP Day webinar as an opportunity to formally launch this handbook. And a snapshot of this cover page is being shared with you for your reference. Divesh, would you like to show that? Hello, Divesh? Yeah, that's the one. With this, I'll now invite Mr. Raghavendra to say a few words about the Copyright 101 compendium that he had written the foreword for, and then kindly chair the session and take the panel discussion forward. Mr. Raghavendra, please.
Thank you, Dipankar, and good evening, everyone. And this is the week we are celebrating World Intellectual Property Week. In fact, yesterday was the World Intellectual Property Day, and 23rd was World Book and Copyright Week. And these are the days we try to focus on the important action plans we are already implemented and what we are going to do in the future. I would like to congratulate the entire team of IPR Mentla, led by Anusri, and the creative eye of Uday Singh and Lohita, Sujit, and including Fiki, who have come together to publish this handbook, excellent handbook on copyright 101, which gives a bird's eye view on the basics of copyright law for creators and right owners and authors and various stakeholders in the industry to know the basics of their rights and how to manage their rights, how to monetize their rights. When I just browsed through for the first time, I knew it's going to be a excellent handbook, not only for the beginners, students, and the various stakeholders, various copyright creative industry sectors, whether it is publishing authors, or film industry, or music industry, and performers, and software guys, and various digital streaming platforms are there, and guys working over there, and of course students, not only the law students and various others who have interest in the learning of the importance basics of copyright law. I'd like to congratulate again everyone involved in bringing this handbook, and thanks a lot. Shall we begin with Dipankar?
Yes, sir. Please, would you like to invite the speakers in?
Please go ahead.
The speakers that we have for us today is Mr. Uday Singh. He's the Managing Director of the Motion Pictures Association India office. He's responsible for promoting and protecting the commercial and creative interests of Hollywood studios in India, as well as those of the local screen communities. He's been on several industry government working groups and been a jury member of the national awards for the most film-friendly state. Before joining MPA, he was CEO of EVR Pictures, and prior to that, he had headed the India operations for Columbia TriStar Motion Pictures Group. Let me quickly also introduce the other speakers. The other speaker is Mr. Girish Luthra, Senior Vice President of FICCI CM SME and Chairman of the Luthra Group of Companies. He's a leading entrepreneur in the field of textiles, waste management, environment protection, industrial infrastructure, and hospitality sector. Some of his recognitions include being a patent holder for a machine design in textiles, the recipient of the government's NRTC award in 2020, and the Young Scientist of the Year award by Gujarat government in 2003. He's been a part of several Ministry of Textiles committees, and he's been on several national and international delegations as an expert on cleaner production and hazardous waste management. He's registered faculty with UNIDO and UNEP, and has been involved in projects with USAID, UNEP, and CIDA. The next speaker we have is Mr. John Kabeka. He's the US Intellectual Property Counselor for South Asia and serves as the principal officer within the US embassies and consulates throughout the region on matters related to IP policy and protection and enforcement of IP rights. A veteran of the US Department of Commerce for over 30 years, he has dedicated his career to working across innovation ecosystems at all levels to carry out strategic direction of IP policy while advocating for the needs of IP stakeholder. And the fourth speaker we have is Mr. Sunit Kapoor. He is a global brand relations manager for the APAC region of Amazon. He drives strategic relations with industry leaders and support brands in safeguarding their IP rights at Amazon. He works with brands, industry associations, and enforcement agencies to promote Amazon's brand protection efforts. And before joining Amazon, he was leading the enforcement division of CPAM at the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. And Sumit also briefly worked as an independent media industry consultant on IP issues. I now pass the floor on to Mr. Raghavendra, please. Sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dipankar. Thank you for introduction to this panel discussion, converting ideas into business opportunities, especially focusing on the MSMEs. Today is MSME Day, and I'm happy to be among my backup friends of IP sector. Welcome, Mr. Uday Singh, Mr. Girish Luthra, and Mr. John Kabeka, and also Mr. Sunit Kapoor to this panel discussion. So let us have 5 minutes each to the speaker to come out with their suggestions, action plans, and what they have done, what they have contributed, and what they are planning in the future, so that all the participants in this event will learn from their knowledge database. And once I wrap up again, I give them a 30-second quick statement on the event, and then we'll open the session for the questions and answers. We all know that MSMEs, as speaker, the previous speaker, the keynote speaker, Mr. Rajendra Ratno, Joint Secretary, and CG spoke about, and also respected Sabharwal also spoke about the importance of MSMEs, who are backbones or engines of growth in any economy. And India, recently, Indian government has given more focus to the growth of MSME sector, considering the importance of inextricably linked with the IPR, innovation, inventions, and protection and management of rights, IPR rights by these MSMEs, especially the valuation of the IP they are generating, and the IP audit by these SMEs are very, very important. Honorable Sri Narendra Modi, respected Prime Minister of India, in March last year, announced Atmanirbhar Bharat, as a scheme which he says we have to vocal for the local and local for the entire world. And that's what he emphasized. And as per this, various schemes have been unleashed. And one of them is focusing on the Atmanirbharta in the MSMEs. And this is very, very important. You know, achieving Atmanirbharta, you know, especially in the generic pharmaceutical industry, India could send hydroxychloroquine and paracetamol to more than 120 countries during this COVID pandemic. And our own Atmanirbhar vaccine, Covaxin generated by Bharat Biotech from Hyderabad has been, shared with more than 70 countries in the world. So Atmanirbharata is very, very important, and the various aspects of IP rights, IP management is also very, very important for the MSMEs, whether it is registration of their rights, management of rights, and protection and enforcement of rights. To strengthen the enforcing contract parameter under the ease of doing business, which I am taking care in the Department of Justice with, with the support from the E-Committee of Supreme Court and especially the High Courts of Delhi and Mumbai. With the implementation of the Commercial Court Act 2015 is very, very important. Under this, dedicated commercial courts have been set up in Delhi and Mumbai, 22 in Delhi, 4 in Mumbai, and 46 more courts are going to be set up in Delhi because we set a target of one dedicated court to deal with 500 commercial disputes. So basically, we want to bring down the time, the speedy and cost-effective justice for a commercial dispute, which includes IPR-related disputes, and and there are 22 varieties of commercial dispute as mentioned in the definition of commercial dispute in the Commercial Court Act. And then beauty of this Commercial Court amendment, which took place in 2018, is introduction of pre-litigation pre-institution mediation system, and it's the opt-out model, mandatory but with opt-out model. Within 3 months, any commercial dispute can be settled before filing any case in the commercial court, unless and until it is necessary because of some urgency related to commercial interest protection of those things. And also recently, the abolition of IPAB also going to speed up the IPR litigation because 25 high courts, which are already set up commercial benches, a dedicated single judge on the original side will be taken care of, because earlier everyone used to run to Chennai or whenever the benches were functioning in Delhi and Mumbai. But now in 25 states, we have commercial benches in high courts. Apart from that, we have dedicated commercial courts for any IPR violation. So this is what the advantageous position which MSMEs can also have a win-win situation. Now, I would like to invite each and every speaker, giving them an opportunity to speak and explain the importance of MSMEs, its linkage with intellectual property rights. I request my friend Uday Singh at the beginning. Uday, you have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for the forward, and thank you for releasing the report. I think I hope creators will find it as useful as we thought it should be while we were compiling it. I will focus on the media entertainment sector, and I think I would go so far as to say, without the MSME sector, the media entertainment sector would not have been around. We've heard many times that this business is fragmented. We have so many industries within India in the M&E sector, but we, I think, have a reverse problem of sorts where we are not able to scale as much as we would like to scale. But having said that, I think we've seen the value of this sector, its contribution to India's GDP, and how we can see that this can grow at an accelerated rate, especially as we come out of this pandemic. I certainly believe that the media entertainment sector can kickstart very fast and kind of start looking at a recovery which is, I think, much faster and contribute higher to the economy. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the screen is somewhat frozen there. So the way I would look at it is that how can we kind of scale from here, and how can we ensure that Indian content not only is consumed here but travels globally, And one of the things is to have exciting new voices come into the sector and bring in fresh ideas, content, and help us take this content to the global market, not just within India. And I think the government kind of recognized it, because when we did the Deloitte study, it goes back to 2019, because 2020, I would say, was a aberration. 2021 is turning out to be an extended problematic year. But if you went to look at a normalized year like 2019, the gross value added by the M&E sector was about 349,000 crore, and it contributed to about 26.6 lakh jobs, direct and indirect and induced. So it is a fairly sizable contributor to the Indian economy in terms of jobs. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, we have a very good chance if we kind of, after this pandemic goes away, the sector can actually kick back into action very, very quickly. In fact, for this brief period, when things were seemingly coming back to normal, productions were quite active, and that content we are seeing on television and in the web series space, what was shot in the last few months. So the next thing I would like to say is this compendium that we've created, as well as the whole idea of monetizing your IP. It can be best understood that it is so easy today, and it's so interesting that a creative person can actually have the global market available to them, because all the major companies in the world are operating in India. We've seen how Delhi Crime won the Emmys. We've seen how Chhota Bheem is one of the largest animation films across the planet. So what we are seeing is a very, very interesting situation where a good piece of content, irrespective of where it's created, is traveling globally into about 100, 190 countries. We've seen that how Indians have embraced series like Fauda and so many other pieces of content coming out of Israel or Turkey. So language also doesn't seem to be much of a barrier. As long as the content is good, it is traveling to different parts of the world. We've also seen how Dangal did business in China. So with the globe kind of shrinking around us, we have a great opportunity to tap into these supply lines and to monetize the IP, unlike we've ever been able to do before. What we have to ensure, however, is that we continue to protect the content the way we've had the dynamic injunctions from Delhi, and I think a few more initiatives, if we were to take very specifically in protecting IP in a better way, I think we would be able to monetize it even better. Now, coming to the issue of what are the specific steps that we could do, is I think the government recognized this opportunity. And as you said rightly, they have identified the M&E sector as a champion services sector. And there was a whole plan which was put around it to incentivize and how India could actually join the global supply chains and make India, make in India resonate across the world, given India's highly skilled crews and capabilities, and the fact that we do a lot of the VFX within India, and also the fact that India, the India to the dollar, arbitrage is very high. We actually felt that there was an opportunity that India, if we had to just give out an incentive, more symbolically, that yes, we are here to play the game with the other countries because it's a very competitive market. Those productions could actually come out of India, and India could then become like a supply hub to the world. Now, we have seen several states also going that direction, and I think Maharashtra is in the process of revamping the entire film city. Noida has set up another film city. So I think the infrastructure is coming up, the capabilities are there, the vibrant MSME sector is contributing highly to it. We are now educating them on how to monetize their copyright and how to monetize their IP. I think the stage is set, and as we come back from the pandemic, I think we should be in a very good position to say that we can take what we sometimes say is a K curve, where some sectors will go faster in terms of recovery and some will go slower. Hopefully, we will be at the top end of that K curve, leading the recovery back as we come out of this pandemic. That's all I have to say as my opening remarks.
Thank you, Vijay. It's sweet and short, and also important issue you mentioned. And you made us travel from how MSMEs and the film industry coping with the pandemic, and how the digital technology has been utilized for releasing the films and various series through digital platforms, streaming platforms, in fact, and also the importance of Make in India in the film industry. The moment you say two people, I remember always the father of Make in India, that is Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi. At the time, I was in DPIIT when it was announced, and when the then secretary and my boss, Sri Amitabh Kant, who planned so effectively, and then another person I remember about film industry who contributed to the development of industries, respected late Srimati Sushma Swaraj Madam. When she was INB minister, she was the one who took the initiative to recognize entire film sector as an industry, and and transform the entire film industry, which has grown to this level, and still not getting any trouble in getting proper finances, legal financing during even the COVID pandemic period. Thanks you, excellent presentation. Now I move on to and invite Mr. Girish Luthra, Senior Vice President PICI and CMSME Chairman, and also Luthra Group of Companies. Welcome, Mr. Luthra.
Thank you, sir. Good evening to all of you. Interesting subject to talk from MSME perspective, and I wanted to set a tone for my MSME brothers and sisters, that why it is important and what should be done to take it from the point of idea to the commercialization when we talk, and why IP is important in business. I thought that should be setting the tone for my MSME friends who are present here today, and later on can be we can also transmit our presentation if required. To start a very, in the manufacturing sector especially, and today India is seen inherited business by younger generation who are educated and have come into modernizing their own traditional plants. The first, I would just like to trigger it in a very crude manner, that the first source of income that these young generations have is from the inherited money or the wealth. And then through his efforts, he has an opportunity to earn. And then the next level of what now I understand that which the younger generation is appreciating, and the MSME sector needs to learn and adopt a few things, that apart putting an effort today and earning money, you also need to have knowledge to earn better wealth. Knowledge does earn money in longer term, and because now knowledge is also a type of wealth, IP becomes an important role to play, because that can then protect even MSMEs. I mean, casually speaking, in last COVID year, we got an opportunity to file 4 more patents. Why? Because now, why do we need so critically employees leave and come and go, apart your competitors using your knowledge, and misuse by your own ex-employees becomes a big challenge. That is one of the major issues in MSME, which we need to address, and all MSME should appreciate that we have to follow that protocol in favor of our knowledge and knowledge-based earning. So protecting is a major, so from idea, when it starts from an idea, which is a creative thinking, to innovation, the next step is validation of the same, which can be done through some experts. And as rightly said by our Joint Secretary, sir, that now Government of India is giving a lot of funds even to support the lawyer fees. So it is no more an expensive exercise as we used to think earlier. Post-validation, once the IP step 1 has been done, I'm sure later on the procedural matter is going to be discussed in session 2. The startups can then look at introducing the same in market, then scaling up, calling for PEs or angel investors, they become more confident once the IP is in place. So raising fund from market also becomes a great advantage for the industry guys. To get this advantage, we need to look at becoming a formal knowledge holder. And I'm sure post that, market is sky is the limit. The value of the company, not only for the startups, for even existing companies, has increased multifold in quite a few companies what we know of. Leave aside pharma, where there is a patent mechanism, they are large enough to do so. However, the other manufacturing sectors, they start feeling, especially in MSME, that nahi, hamara kaam, so it's only just a basic work. We are not doing much. But they never know that if they do a good homework or a good strategic validation process, almost 5 out of 10 ideas can come into place for IP. It is because the number of friends that we have met, we have found that their fear were useless. So with that, I just wanted to set the tone for the SME, and SME would feel that I don't have enough resources for doing a good research or innovation. The Center of Excellence is today across the country, set up by several ministries, including MSME ministry, are good enough to help you convert your idea into reality. So with this, I just thank the audience. Over to you, sir. So your mic. So your mic is mute.
Thank you, Mr. Luthra. In excellent manner, you explained on the conversion of ideas into business opportunities. With your rich experience, it was very much needed, throwing the light on various levels of various stages, in fact, involved in converting, especially getting the market funding, and how startups have to plan ahead to move from one level to another level. That's really interesting talk you have given. This will definitely help the MSME participants who are attending this event. Now, I would request Mr. John Kabeka, IP Counselor, South Asia, USPTO, with his experience in working in USPTO and as an IP counselor. So what are the best practices in the US he can suggest to IP protection in MSME, and how it is going on? I request him to give some suggestions to the MSME participants. Welcome, Mr. John Kabeka. Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. And just want to take a moment to congratulate Vicky on convening such a thoughtful program and bringing together an impressive team of speakers from DPIIT and from the Ministry of MSME, as well as other government agencies and stakeholders across industry, the legal community, academia, and research and development. This year's World IP Day theme, IP and SMEs, is very near and dear to me. Prior to arriving here in New Delhi, I was the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office Regional Director in Silicon Valley, and I worked extensively with startups in helping them go, in the very earliest stages of their development, recognize the need to protect intellectual property. So I'm happy to talk about some of the initiatives that we've employed over the years. But again, turning to today's program and to all the participants, I think this sends a very clear message and underscores how important it is to foster and support the startup community and early stage entrepreneurs, and to help them understand intellectual property, its nuances, and its pitfalls. And so very pleased to be part of your program today. I will, in the interest of time, I will just generally, what I thought I would do is take a step back. As we have new technologies emerging every day, and that's a wonderful thing. That's a sign that our IP systems are working. And generally, we build IP systems to help create balance, and the strength of an intellectual property right helps to level that playing field and create incentives to innovate. This is true across industries, across technologies, across all forms of intellectual property, for all innovators, from the independent inventor, from the startup, the early stage entrepreneur, that all have very few resources, and to help put them on equal footing with large global companies that understand full well how to navigate the IP landscape in a particular country, if not around the world. This is why intellectual property is so important to small and emerging businesses. So for startups and early stage entrepreneurs, it's critical that they understand the different types of intellectual property, how they overlap, identify what aspects of their business model can be protected by intellectual property, and to prioritize which of those aspects they should actually pursue intellectual property rights for. As Mr. Sabharwal said in the opening, an IP strategy is an integral part of a business strategy. And again, looking back over our history, it's important to note that as new technologies emerge, and I think we talk about 5G and we talk about artificial intelligence and many other technologies, as these emerge, we look back and see how our intellectual property systems have stood the test of time. We've seen throughout history, anytime something new or a new sector comes along, these test the delicate balance of IP and of IP systems, and sometimes testing them in globally around the world. And we've seen this at the earliest stages of our own development, looking back over 100 years ago at the invention of the automobile, and now nearly over 200 years ago at the invention of the sewing machine. We take these inventions granted today, but at that time, they too tested and challenged the efficacy of our IP systems. Yet, as a result, the important balance between securing intellectual property protection and spurring technological advancement, I think we can see how far these innovations have come today. Turning back to this year's themes and to startups, as I mentioned, this theme is very near and dear to me, and startups have a tremendous amount of drive and energy. They're driven by solving problems, and they'll go to great lengths to try to solve that problem. But as a new enterprise, they're also vulnerable. And it's important that we can do what we can to help support them, and again, commending the efforts within the Indian government, within the Ministry of MSMEs, and within DPIIT and India's IP office, to creating many of the incentives that you heard today to support the development of the startups. But where I think the most important area is right at the beginning on IP education, to help them understand the balance between rights, between the different types of rights, patents, trademarks, designs, copyrights, trade secrets, and others. And from my experience, two things are clear that puts their businesses at risk. One is something that they do to themselves, their own drive and dedication to find solutions. Sometimes they talk about their invention that often can be treated as a public disclosure, which may impact their ability to get IP rights and secure those rights down the line. So having that education up front so they don't, to help mitigate their own risks from their own disclosures, is critically important. And the other piece is from the infrastructure within respective IP systems. As for most startups, their very first intellectual property right is a trade secret. That undisclosed information, while they're in stealth mode, while they're in research and development, that needs to be protected. And as Mr. Luthra mentioned on how important securing that knowledge is, especially as that knowledge leaves your business, leaves the startup, maybe spins off and creates their own startup, goes to work for a competitor, it's critically important to have laws in place to help secure that confidential information, and to help ensure that it stays in confidence and is not misused or misappropriated by other means. So those are, I think, are two areas that are critically important. At the USPTO, we have tons of resources to help support the early stage entrepreneur. Online, there's portals, there's videos, there's webinars, but we also have call centers where you can actually call and speak to an IP expert. We have pro bono programs, and similar to the case here in India, reduced patent filing fees, and in some offices also offering expedited examination, some for startups and some for other government funded, some opportunities within the government to receive funding for the advancement and development of those projects. I know we don't have a lot of time to go into those in more detail, but I think it's safe to say that IP has and continues to be a driver in helping to push economies forward. I'm personally excited that our recently signed Memorandum of Understanding between the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office and DPIIT will help to foster cooperation on these such discussions here in India. And I look forward to advancing our cooperation, including our shared efforts to support and nurture small businesses and entrepreneurial activity. I hope you're all well, staying safe, and with that, happy World IP Day, and I'll turn it back over to the Joint Secretary. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. John. Excellent talk, focusing on the very important point of IP strategy for MSME sector. And each MSME should have IP strategy for IP valuation, IP audit, and how many MSMEs are either creators or users or both. So IP strategy is very, very important for their growth and protection of intellectual properties of the IP, their IP creation, and also respect to the IP of other MSMEs if they are using them for the businesses. That's very, very important. And that comes with only awareness of rights and education, IP education you rightly put in, and also the various important scheme run by the government of India for the startups. That's very, very important. And also the various important things you mentioned about what the USPTO is doing. That's really excellent. Congratulations for that. Now I move on to my young friend, Sumit, who is to be the princess of CPAM since its beginning. So I would like to get more interesting information from him in his presentation. Sumit, start.
Thank you very much, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, it is a pleasure to be a part of this elite panel. Well, let me thank Vicky for organizing this event and inviting us to discuss this extremely important subject. Well, I'm very delightful as I'm sharing the panel with two of my mentors and ex-bosses, Mr. Raghavinder Singh and Mr. Uday Singh, under whose guidance I have actually crafted my career. Coming to the topic, we at Amazon truly believe that small and medium scale businesses are a nation's economic backbone. You might be aware that Amazon recently announced a $250 million venture fund for small and medium scale businesses in India. Now, this new fund will focus on digitization of small businesses, innovation in the agri-tech sector, and health tech sector. This contribution and our ongoing effort towards strengthening the small and medium scale businesses illustrates our ongoing continued commitment towards this important sector. Well, coming to IP, we have seen that multiple debates around empowering small and medium businesses. However, not many of them see IP as a catalyst in this empowerment. In fact, to the contrary, IP is an important factor in growth of industry. Sadly, not many industries realize this fact. So it is thus imperative to talk about this topic. And hence, let me congratulate Wipo and Vicky for charting discussion on this much important subject. Let me also congratulate the Office of CGP-DTM and DPIIT, who have spearheaded the campaign for creating awareness about the IP amongst MSME under the National IPR policy. Well, keeping in mind the time restrictions and without much delay, let me quickly deal with this subject specifically from an e-commerce perspective And let me also briefly touch base on what Amazon is doing to promote and protect IP for small businesses. Now, we have heard from our past speakers that there are a couple of things which are very important for our small businesses in terms of IP. And the first one is awareness about IP, knowing that they might have an IP. And two, taking that idea forward by creating an IP. And then, the third is about commercialization, and fourth is about protecting of that IP. I would basically try to divide this theme into two parts. One is what the small businesses should do, and the second part is what the e-commerce platform should be doing in order to promote IP amongst the small businesses and also help protect that IP amongst them. So as I mentioned, that the two main pillars when it comes to IP for small businesses at e-commerce platform is first creation of IP, and the second one is protection of IP. Over the time, and especially during this pandemic, we have seen a lot of brands and small businesses moving to the e-commerce platform. Believe me, they come with with very innovative and niche kind of ideas, and these ideas which needs to be protected, and these ideas that SMEs and these small businesses need to understand might might have an IP in them which they might not even realize. So one of the things that at Amazon we do is help help these small businesses create an IP, and then the second step is to help protect that IP. Talking about that first stage about creation of IP, we have this program which is called IP Accelerator. And what IP Accelerator basically do, it is and help businesses sort out their IP needs, and it tries to basically connect the small businesses with a curated network of law firm, where they can basically go out to and try to create an IP at a very competitive rate. The idea is basically to ease the entire entire system of creating IP, which is usually considered as complex, to ease that entire process and to bring the resources on table that these SMEs can basically utilize and go out and create an IP. Now, once that IP is created, the second natural step comes in the form of how do we protect that IP? And I think that's where we basically do.
Sumit, we have 1 minute to wind up.
Yeah,
we are already overshooting. Yeah,
certainly, sir. So in terms of protection, we basically come up with an array of tools that these small businesses can basically use to protect the IP that they have created. Now, there are a number of industry-leading tools for businesses such as brand registry, transparency, Project Zero, etc., which these small businesses can use to protect their IP. We hugely rely on technology and machine learning tools so that we can share a part of work that these small businesses would be doing in order to protect their IP. Impact-wise, we have invested over $500 million US and employed over 8,000 persons to fight fraud and abuse. We have removed over 6 billion suspected bad listings and published, which are published on our store. And we have seen that 99% of the product pages at Amazon have not received a single notice of potential counterfeit infringement. The idea is basically to tell small businesses that, look, there could be a potential IP infringement at the e-com platforms as well. And the idea is to provide them with the tools which they can basically go out and use and protect their IP. So to conclude, we are hopeful that gradually more and more small businesses would see IP as an important part of their business strategy. We are hopeful that government will continue to provide a conducive environment for small businesses towards creation and protection of IP. And lastly, we at Amazon will continue to invest tools and processes that will ease the creation and protection of IP for smaller businesses at Amazon. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumit, for excellent information about how Amazon is trying to protect and promote IP of MSMEs. And this may be a model for other upcoming e-commerce websites. They have to follow this maybe as a best practice. Now, I quickly I want all the panelists to give one sentence advice to all the MSME participants, just a short sentence, phrase advice to MSME participants and on the intellectual property rights. Starting from Uday, please.
Quick advice is please get hold of a copy of Copyright 101 that tells anybody who's getting into the business on how to protect their copyright, how to deal with their copyright, and what they need to do to monetize their copyright. So
yeah, excellent. Mr. Luthra, please. You have any advice? Short sentence.
My simple advice is that remember, world is gone flat. So protect your knowledge at the right time before it is too late.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. John, you have some advice?
So yes, I'll reiterate what I said earlier, but just to share that definitely get help, but at the same time, nobody knows your business more than you. So understand the different types of IP, understand how they overlap, and then employ what's going to be important for your business strategy.
Thank you, John. And Sumit, finally.
Sir, I would say that, guys, you have an IP for sure. All you need to do is go out, find it, and protect it.
Thank you. I would like to thank all the panelists. Dipankar, do we have time for questions or we have to close?
Well, you can maybe take one or at the most two questions, if any.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't see any hands raised.
Yeah. Have you collected any questions? You can go ahead and ask to the panelists. For the sake.
Well, no, we do not have any questions as such.
I don't think any participant would like to ask any question to the panelists, please. Yeah. Otherwise, and I would like to thank all my co-panelists for excellent presentations, and also would like to congratulate Vicky on holding this excellent World Intellectual Property Program, focusing on the importance of MSMEs, and also would like to congratulate Anushree Roita, Lohita Sujit, and Uday Singh coming out with a beautiful and well informative handbook for the copyright, that is Copyright 101. And finally, I would like to say that please wear mask always and maintain social distance and try to help the needy people. And that's what I would like to say. Stay safe and take care. Jai Hind. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raghavendra, first of all, for very kindly consenting to chair this session and so skillfully doing it and moderating at the same time the panel discussion on converting ideas into business opportunities, a very relevant theme and need, particularly for Indian MSMEs. And also, thank you so much, sir, for unveiling the Copyright 101 handbook, which we really hope will be useful, especially for creators in the media and entertainment industry. Thank you, Mr. Raghavendra. Thank you so much. Well, we now move on to the next session, which is on IP creation, protection, and commercialization by MSMEs. And to chair this session, we are very privileged to have Dr. Gautam Bhattacharya, his partner, KNS Partners. Dr. Bhattacharya is a patent attorney and heads the Hyderabad office of the firm, with his practice focus on patent in biotechnology and biosciences. He represents many multinational and domestic corporations on a variety of IP issues, works closely with many startups and spin-offs. He's been active in IP awareness creation among universities, incubation centers, and MSMEs, and regularly speaks at conferences and seminars. And he has several articles to his credit, published in reputed national, international scientific journals. He serves as a member of many committees of national institutions, including the National Institute of Pathology and the National Institute of Immunology. He has had several achievements and honors to his credit as a leading IP strategist and patent professional, and is a member of several leading national, international IP associations and societies. Dr. Gautam, may I now request you to please take over and chair the session. Thank you so much, Dr. Chakraborty.
Thank you, Dipankar, and thank you, Vicky, for giving us the opportunity to be part of this IP Day celebration. And just to take the discussion forward, the sheer magnitude of the micro, small, and medium enterprise sector comes to the fore with approximately 20 lakh crore of goods and services contributing, I think, as much as 40% of the GDP of India. And it also provides livelihood to millions of people and creating value for the entire global community. So development of this sector thus holds the key to inclusive growth and plays a critical role in India's future. We are celebrating the Intellectual Property Day. This annual celebration event is an opportunity to learn about the role of IPR, the play in encouraging innovation and creativity. So the theme of this year is IP SMEs, taking your ideas to market. How they can use the IP rights to build stronger, more competitive, and resilient business. So to take the discussion forward, we have four eminent panelists, and I have the privilege to introduce all of them. And first, let me introduce, just a second. Ms. Tamara Nanayakara, Counselor, SME Division at Wipo. Tamara is a counselor at IP for Business Division, IP and Innovation Ecosystem sectors of Wipo Geneva. Since joining Wipo in 1994, she worked in the Corporation for Development Bureau for Asia and the Pacific Economic Analyst, Forecast and Research Division, and the Least Developed Countries Division. Before joining Wipo, she worked as an attorney at law, as an assistant lecturer at the Faculty of Law of the University of Colombo in Sri Lanka. She holds bachelor's and master's degree in law from the University of Colombo and master's degree in international management from the University of St. Thomas, Minnesota, USA. Welcome, Tamara. Next speaker, Ms. Sumantra Mukherjee. Jamunti is a director with KPMG India and has over 17 years of experience in Big Four consulting and is currently leading the innovation and IP practice at KPMG in India. He has been listed as world leading IP strategist in 2017 and 18 edition of IM Strategy 300. He has led multiple assignments pertaining to IP strategy, intellectual asset management, IP audit, IP due diligence, IP commercialization, etc. He is a member of FICCI's IPR committee and its IP commercialization task force. Just a second, I lost the. Okay. So, Dr. Lakshmi Supriya, Chief Technology Officer, Delphi Legal and IP Consultant. Lakshmi brings more than a decade of global experience in product development and IP. She has worked in different types of role in R&D at corporations like Intel, Saint-Gobain in US, and worked in several startups in US and India in technologies ranging from semiconductor to medical devices, managing product and business development. She is also an inventor with several granted US patents. Lakshmi is a registered Indian patent agent and has worked in a leading law firm in India handling patent drafting and prosecution for various jurisdictions. He has a PhD in polymer science and engineering and undergraduate degree from Indian Institute of IIT Kharagpur. And finally, Ms. Pearl Sobti, Assistant Vice President, CPAM. Pearl is an experienced IP professional and is currently working as Assistant Vice President in the cell for IPR promotion and management. Her expertise is in the field of IPR, including on IPR awareness, commercialization, and enforcement. Pearl has an extensive experience in the field of intellectual property and has earlier worked with leading pharmaceutical companies of the countries. Now coming to the discussion. So IPR creation by MSME, the numbers are not really encouraging. Is there a need to bring a cultural change from the use of IPR as a strategic tool for economic and enterprise development? Normally, people think that IPR is an operational cost, rather it is an investment. And WIPO has been playing a pivotal role in bringing the cultural change. So, may I request Tamara to give an insight what are being done by WIPO in this regard? Over to you, Tamara.
Thank you, Gautam. And it's a great pleasure to be here. And thank you very much for inviting WIPO to join these discussions. Do you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. I also want to take the opportunity to greet Mr. Sabrawal, with whom I started my career at WIPO. And it's a great pleasure to see him here. I hope he's still here to accept my greetings. So in this brief intervention, I would like to highlight WIPO's approach to bringing about change in the use of the IP system by SMEs. Do you still not see my screen?
E-presentation.
Do you see it?
No, Tamara.
It's visible. We can see you. Please go ahead.
It should be sharing.
Yes. Now we can.
Now we can see.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. So, a recent study in the EU has shown that about 60% of large companies are owning IPRs, but less than 9% of small businesses are owning IPRs. And that you see that those companies that own IPR have a 20% higher revenue per employee and are paying 19% higher wages than companies that don't have IPRs. So you can see that even in the EU, this is not something that is confined to developing countries, but even in the most developed countries, there is very low use of the IP system by small companies. And when we ask ourselves why that is, the general answers are that SMEs see the IP system to be something that is very complex and something that takes too long, and it's not worth the trouble of going through the whole process, especially in terms of obtaining patents. And the costs, maybe national filing costs may not be too high, but in terms of legal costs and other costs that are relevant for maintaining the IP, etc., are considered obstacles by SMEs. They also feel that even if they go through this whole process and get themselves an IP right, they're not able to enforce it against big companies. And this is a serious problem for SMEs. And they think that there are better ways of protecting the information and knowledge, perhaps by keeping them as trade secrets and keeping their information that is sensitive, not exposed through the patent system. And the products have now a very short life cycle, and consumers are looking for innovations very soon. They want something different, something new in very quick cycles. So the IP system is too slow to catch up with that. And finally, there is limited awareness of the benefits of the IP system. So these are broadly the reasons as to why small businesses don't rely on the IP system. So our approach in WIPO, the new Director General Darren Tang has put an additional emphasis on SMEs, and this is why also IP days are focused on SMEs. And in that context, our focus in WIPO is twofold. On the one hand, to create tools and materials to create awareness and understanding of the system and provide capacity building on IP management. On the other hand, to support SME intermediaries to strengthen the IP support services, because we understand that SMEs are too numerous to actually reach through any kind of programs, that we can reach them only through SME intermediaries. And by SME intermediaries, we speak of chambers of commerce, incubators, science parks, accelerators, all those who are interacting with SMEs, those that SMEs have confidence and trust in. So FICCI is a very important player in this context as a grouping of SME intermediaries. And we try to support such SME intermediaries to strengthen the IP support services that they have. And we also support governments to integrate IP into their SME development plans and policies. So our first port of call is our website, and I encourage everyone to please have a look at wipo.int/SMEs. There's a lot of material on IP for business in that website, and I won't take your time with that now, but please take the opportunity to have a look at our website. And we have also developed a series of guides, what we call the IP for Business series of guides, which are small handbooks written in business language and are reference material. I mean, they are done in the style of question and answer. So if when you have a question, you can refer and hopefully find the answer in these books. The latest one, Enterprising Ideas, which is a guide for startups, is coming out in perhaps this week or next. So it's a very new publication. All these others have been recently updated. So we use these publications to reach SMEs as well as to support SME intermediaries by localizing and adapting these guides to the local context. We have also recently developed what we call the Wipo Ip Diagnostics, and it is a self-assessment tool that SMEs, it's also for SME intermediaries, but I'll get to that, but it's for SMEs to play with, to try on their own. So you can go to the website and you can do start IP diagnostic, and you get a series of questions. And the first set of questions are 10, which basically intersect or look into all the different issues that a company might face when they're looking to IP. So very quickly, I will just say yes to these just to show you how it works. Essentially, it asks you, do you have an inventory product? Do you use a sign to distinguish your products? Do you use materials like pamphlets, videos, software, etc.? Do you use colors, patterns, etc. for your products to make them attractive? Do you use information that is confidential, that gives you a business advantage? Do you rely on external suppliers? Do you work or engage in exports, etc.? When you answer these 10 questions, you're taken to another page which goes deeper into the issues that you have identified as important to you. And I won't go into it now because I don't have the time, but please try this. You get at the end of each section that you do a report that is an automated report. I hope you see this PDF document, which goes into and gives you an answer depending on the questions that you have answered. So you get, if you do all of these sections, you get something like a 45-page report that tells you what the IP issues that are relevant to your business. And you can use them either by yourself and understand them on your own, or you can take them to an intermediary service provider who can perhaps help you and interpret the report.
I think your screen is not moving.
Sorry?
We are still
Your
seeing
screen is not moving.
The screen is not moving. We are just seeing Wipo Ip Diagnostics.
Yeah, because I'm still on it, so I will just close it.
Oh, okay. You mentioned a PDF, so that was the.
Yeah, the PDF I closed already. I thought you saw it. Okay, I'm sorry.
And
And
you have only 1 minute time.
Okay.
Max.
Okay. So we use the IP diagnostic tool also to support countries put in place an advisory service where they can customize the IP for business guides that I mentioned earlier, also customize or use the Wipo IP diagnostics. We provide training on IP management, etc., to create some kind of an SME advisory, IP advisory support service within an SME intermediaries. So this is basically what we are doing in Wipo, and a very quick run through of them. And I'll be glad to take any questions later on. I have to warn you that I have to run for another event, so I may not be here. But if you are still on, I will be happy to answer any questions. So thank you very much, and I will close.
Tomorrow, very happy to see you. This is Sabharwal.
Yes, Mr. Sabharwal, very happy to see you too. I hope you heard my greetings.
Yes, I did, and
Okay.
please, it's nice to see you, and please give my best regards to the Director General also.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sabharwal. Good to see you that you're well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Tamara, thank you so much. And now moving forward, second is the IP strategy. So Tamara very clearly given and suggested to use the various resources at Wipo website. It's available on Wipo website. But now you need to have a strategy, IP strategy, which is the key in creating the value. Honestly speaking, it will be a wastage of money and time and money if the IP strategy does not talk to the business strategy. So to elaborate on this, I would request Sumanta to take come over to the virtual stage, and over to you, Sumanta.
Thank you, Gautam, and a very warm welcome and a good evening to everybody. So I would like to briefly touch upon the aspect of IP strategy and how the SMEs and startups can leverage an IP strategy, which is not to say that you should boil the ocean to develop an IP strategy, but you should do what is relevant for you and which takes minimal investment. Now, when we look at startups or MSME as a business, we always know the challenge in terms of the constraint that we all have in terms of our resources, right? So where to invest that money? Should we continue to focus on our products, or should we continue to make sure that we have enough visibility of the products in the market, or should we waste our money in filing for patents and copyrights and trademark, wherein we might not see an immediate benefit, right? But the answer is very simple, and that if you have, and if you believe that you have created a differentiated product, and your product is something which is unique and which will pull in revenue in years to come, then look at IP as a long-term investment for you, which will give you a good enough return on investment over a period of time. Don't look at IP protection from a short-term standpoint ever. Now, what I'll do is that I will briefly take you through some of the nuances of IP strategy and some of the aspects that you should consider while you are looking at the strategy. And as Gautam mentioned, that it should be aligned to your business strategy as well. So one, when you are developing your product or solution, you should ensure that you are using publicly available resources to ensure that your product is from what is there already in the market. You should have an understanding of what is there, what is your competitors doing in that particular technology domain, be it in India or be it outside of India. You should have a clear sense of your value proposition, your unique selling elements that you are going to take to the market. And this will not only help you in positioning your products in the market, but also help you in funding or in getting funding from the investors. The second aspect that you should take care is that once you have developed the product, you should look at protecting the unique aspects of the product through an IPR protection. It can be in the form of a patent, design, copyright, trade secret, trademark. You can use various elements to protect, and you should also ensure that you are protecting these elements in the jurisdictions wherein you will have the maximum amount of sales of your products. If it is in India, you should do it in India. If it is in India and US, you should go and protect in India and US as well. So that is on the IPR protection. Now, once you have the patent application even filed, you can use the patent application also to showcase to your customers and clients that you have a technology supremacy in your domain and you are ahead of your competition. This actually gives you a lot of marketing benefits when you are going out in the market. And as and when you are adding new and additional features to your product, you can keep on adding more patents or more copyright or more trademark to your portfolio to create a larger set of portfolio. So this investment is not one time. It will happen over a period of time. And that is how you will build a total IPR portfolio over a period of time, which will help you commercialize your products and your assets and will help you monopolistic market for yourself. Now, when I'm talking about IP strategy, the other element which is important is to take care of the risk management aspects of IPR portfolio as well. Now, when you are looking at the risk management elements, one thing that you should ensure that your product should not infringe on anybody else's IP. The second thing is that a lot of people are nowadays using a lot of open source elements in their products. Make sure that you are compliant in terms of the way you use an open source component in your product. You should have a process in place within your organization wherein you have non-disclosure agreements, employee agreements, agreements with your vendors to ensure that you have a robust process to protect your intangible assets and confidential information and know-how. And it does not get leaked by somebody and taken by your competitor. So all these are extremely essential elements and they are not very cost heavy if you do it judiciously. These are some of the points I would like to highlight, Gautam, and back to you.
Thank you, Sumantra. So next, once you create your IP, once you have, as Tamara mentioned, share the resources, you create, you understand, you create your IP, you strategize. Sumudra has given a roadmap or IP strategy. Next part is garnering the value from your IPR. How SME can garner the values. One of the option is to commercialize your IP. So to discuss the commercialization process, I call upon Lakshmi to share her thoughts. Over to you, Lakshmi.
Yes, thank you, Gautam. Very good evening to everyone, and it is an honor to be part of this esteemed panel and discussion. And I thank Vicky and the organizers for giving me and my organization, Delphi, a chance to talk about IP commercialization. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, it has just come, Lakshmi. Please go on.
Okay. So like I said, I'm part of IP, Delphi, Legal and IP Consultants. We are a fairly young company, but we are recognized by DPIIT as a DPIIT recognized startup. And we work in all areas of IP creation, IP protection, IP enforcement, IP monetization. And as Sumantra just mentioned, he said, look at IP as a long-term investment. and from a long-term strategy. Now, what does that really mean? And what type of return on investment can you get from your IP? So what you can get is either you can make money out of your IP. For example, you can license it out, or even just sell your IP outright as if you are selling any other property. And or if you have an IP that protects your technology, you become exclusive in that technology, and so you can charge higher premiums. Or the other way to look at it is you can reduce your costs. For example, you can cross-license it out, your technology, and then reduce your cost. Or you can get freedom to operate in different markets where you don't have the maybe the IP protection there, but it will give you an opportunity to coexist with other players. So I've just put a couple of steps indicating what a commercialization process involves, and we've heard from all the speakers before that protect IP, you can make money out of IP. IP is an asset, but how exactly do you do that? This by no means is the only way to do it. There are many ways of doing it, and this was just to give you an idea of what the whole process of IP monetization or IP commercialization involves. The simplest way is, if you have IP, if you have technology, you can make a product yourself and sell it and make money out of it. But many times that is not possible. So we go through a separate set of processes that can commercialize and make money out of your IP. So if you look at step one of the process, there has to be a due diligence that needs to be performed. The due diligence has to be performed on the technology. What is it? Is it just a proof of concept? There is some testing being done, or is it a commercial product that is already out there? And based on these, which level the technology is and where it is in terms of how good or how different it is from competitors, you can position your commercialization process. The next step in step one is in the due diligence is IP due diligence. So yes, you have filed IP perhaps, and a patent has been granted or set of patents have been granted. But you have to make sure that the patents are the annuities have been paid up, there are no oppositions pending, or there's no litigation pending against the IP. And also you have to look at what is out there, what does the market look like? Are there any other competitors who have similar products? Is there something else that might undermine your technology? So that all this involves this step one of due diligence. Once you finish step one, you go on to step two, which is the valuation process. Valuation, there are many ways of valuing an IP or a technology. And I'm not going to go through all of that because we don't have the time. I'll just touch upon three ways of doing it. The simplest perhaps is what is called a cost model. You just add up how much you spent in developing your technology, and that is the value of your IP. The second approach is what's called a market approach. And the approach of the cost model, where you just add up how much you've spent, may not work all the time, because maybe there is a better product out there and customers are willing to pay more to get a better product. At that point of time, you will have to do what's called a market approach. So you compare your technology and product and the IP with other technologies, products out there, and you position it accordingly in the market, and then you value it based on that. Now, the third approach is what's called an income approach. Sometimes there is no market. For example, when Apple came out with the iPod, there was no market. Startups doing extremely new technologies, there is no market. So how do you decide what is the value of such IP? In that case, you use something called a projected income. What will this be worth in a couple of years from now? And that is how you can value the IP.
Lakshmi, you have 1.5 minutes.
Sure, I'm almost done. After you do step one and step two, now you have a fairly good idea of how much your IP is worth and you've done your due diligence. So now you move on to step three, you look for partners. for sale or license, again, you have to do a due diligence. How good is the company? How strong is the company? How good is the partner? Do you want to go? And then you have to develop your market strategy. Do you want to go long term, short term? Do you just want to sell it, license it? And then you pitch it, you tailor your pitch for different prospects based on this data. After step 3, you go on to step 4, where you negotiate the terms with the different partners and prospects. The negotiations could be based on cost, the terms, the IP terms. Like I said, would it be an exclusive license, non-exclusive license? All that is taken care of in this step 4. And then finally, we come to step 5, where you've crossed all the 4 steps before, and everything is ready. Your agreements are ready. You've converted your negotiations into commercial agreements. That you've drafted the agreement, and all you need to do now is put down your signatures, and hopefully your IP will start making money for you. So that's all that I wanted to share about the steps of IP commercialization. And I'd be happy to take any questions at the end if anybody has anything. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you so much. So now we heard from speakers about the strategy, commercialization, resources, and the last one, we keep on doing committing mistakes while creating the our IP, and actually we cannot afford to commit such mistakes in the IP creation. So to elaborate on this, I request Pearl to share her views. Over to you, Pearl. Sorry, one more thing. I think Pearl will also speak on the government initiatives as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gautam, and thank you, Vicky, for inviting us and taking this step forward and considering MSMEs as the powerhouse of the innovation ecosystem. It's good to connect with you all. So taking the discussion further, MSMEs are considered as nation's economic backbone, and they contribute significantly to the sustainable growth of the nation. In this, since they have more commitment to a business, sometimes they commit errors on the front of IP, which can lead to their commercial losses to a significant extent. So it's important for them to understand the errors which they should avoid while committing to any IP. So there should be a balance between early filing to a late filing. We have seen cases wherein their patent applications were filed so early that even the proof of concept was also not in place, and they committed to filing, and leading to a problem at prosecution stage. Or there are cases wherein we have seen MSMEs have gone to commercialization, and later on they realized during commercialization that they forgot to file their IP rights, which may lead to a long-term loss to them. There are certain compliances as well on the IP front, whether it is Form 8 section, whether it's Section 8 filing, whether it's foreign filing licenses, whether it is NBA approval. So all these compliances with respect to IPRs are also to be met. And that's why it is important that you take help of any of the experts in the field of IP. Sometimes a small fees can give you a long-term advantage. So it is better to hire the experts in the field so that you are on the right track. Then you would also important that you intermingle your business strategy with the IP strategy. Sometimes what happens is that at initial stage, yes, you think that you are only interested in India as your market. But over the years, you realize that yes, there are other global markets wherein you are interested and you want to commercialize the product. But you have already lost the time wherein you could extend your patent filings to other countries. So in that case, you are at a long-term loss. So it is that you have to marry your business as well as your IT strategy. That's the ultimate goal of any product. Coming to the next point, which sometimes people miss out, which is can be a problem at a later stage, would be sharing their know-how with other companies, with vendors, with sometimes suppliers, and without any NDA in place. So all these errors can lead to a problem which may not be a commercially economical solution to saving some money at initial stages, whether it's for a legal expert, whether it's for an IT expert. Some money saved, used, would provide you a long-term advantage on your product. Coming to government initiatives, which was the second part which I had to deal with, Indian government has always been keen on supporting MSMEs, and we have taken several initiatives on this front to support the MSMEs, whether it's because as Wipo team already said that the problems which MSMEs face are with respect to awareness, with respect to commercial, which is finance. They have a limited financial system in place to support this IP function. So considering all these points, Government of India has taken several of key initiatives to support, whether it's on IP awareness front, whether supporting IP filing, whether supporting national and international protection. So coming to the, let's look at few of the key initiatives which Indian government has taken. So Indian DPIIT, realizing that fee or the financial part for MSME sometimes play a significant role on deciding whether to go ahead with filing or whether not to go ahead with filing, they provided a fee reduction for MSMEs. Earlier, the fee was 50% of the large entities, which was further reduced to 80% and is similar to natural person now during the November 2020 amendment. Further, since as Wipo already said that the time limit or they have a short lifespan, to expedite their prosecution, Indian government has provided provisions to MSMEs to expedite their patent filing, their patent prosecution steps. And second, on the IPR awareness front, there are two schemes, which is one of them is launched by MSME, wherein they create various IP awareness programs in which CPAM also contributes to them in collaboration with MSME, wherein several MSME clusters have been provided trainings on workshops on IPR filing, what's the process, what are the basics of IP, and then they also support their patent filing or patent prosecution costs to a certain extent. Similarly, MITI, which is Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, also provides support to MSMEs and startups, wherein since India being still has do not have a much financial burden with respect to patent filing and prosecution, but if we consider foreign countries, this burden could be to a significant extent. So MIT under their schemes provides financial support to the MSMEs in patent prosecution as well as filing for the foreign entities, for the foreign countries. So that's how government has been supporting MSMEs to from awareness to the commercialized perspective at all the levels. I think that's it, Gautam, for me.
Thank you, Pearl. Now, before we conclude, may I request each panelist, starting with Tamara, to share the concluding remark as takeaway message for SMEs?
Well, I guess what I would say is that even if you think that the IP system is not relevant to you, there are other companies that think that it's relevant for them. And so at least as a risk management strategy to prevent yourself from getting into trouble, take account of the IP system.
Sumantra?
I would also like to say the same thing as Tamara mentioned. I think you have to start somewhere, and I think now is the good time to start. So consider this. This is not a burden, but this is going to be an enabler for you.
Yes, you are absolutely correct, Lakshmi.
What I would like to say is I would like to urge everyone to actively seek, create, and protect IP. And if you don't know what you're doing, seek help. There are a lot of resources out there.
Well,
So I would say that you surely have IP, just try to find it. There are many people to help you. Go and seek help. There are people who would find you the right way and for your benefit. So seek help and take hold of your IP.
yeah. As my concluding remark would be, it is not it's not a simple a piece of paper, IP right certificate. Leverage it. Make it a paper tiger, real tiger, not a paper tiger. So, is there any Dipankar? Is there any question?
Yeah, I see one from Avadi Jain. It's on the the box, the question box. The question is, what steps should be taken to increase awareness of IP in non-metro cities, as either people don't know the term IP and its benefits, or they just resist from indulging in in IP, in getting IP or creating IP. It's a very general question. I think anyone can,
Yeah,
or maybe.
Tamara, Pearl, any one of you, because resource.
Yeah, so I would like to take that, and so whoever the person is, request to connect with CPAM, and we would surely connect you with the right panelists and help you create awareness. We have connect with several MSME clusters. Maybe we can intervene and help you in creating more awareness, because we also want to reach to the grassroots level. We have been conducting in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities various awareness programs, and we would love to connect with you.
I think one more question. Is
Yeah,
there a
one
way
from Mehek?
Yes.
If I may read it out, is there any way to protect MSMEs IP from already established players in the market in case of conflict? What is the wisest, or what is the most suggested way to handle such cases?
Lakshmi, would you like to take it up?
I would say that you have to look at how strong your the MSME's IP is, and if it is truly and well protected, then they should just go ahead and seek out help with patent attorneys who can help them in case there is any conflict. I don't know if that makes sense. That's what I understood. Does that make sense?
I'd like to add one point which Sumantra has already mentioned, that you should make sure that you are not infringing. So while creating IP, you should make sure that that your IP is not going to infringe others. And then, of course, second option is second step. Lakshmi has responded. If any one of us would like to add any point over it.
I would add a small point over here, over and above what Lakshmi and you said, that see, IP as a right is equal for all. So you be an MSME or a big established player, once you get an IP right, then you have an equal footing or a standing against an established player as well.
Yes.
So then you are actually on an equal footing to fight that war out, depending on the case in question as to who is in the right side of things. Yes, it might require resources for you to fight an established player in terms of money, in terms of the court fees and the hearing fees, but you will get a justice at the end of the day, and you will also get a lot of bounty, I would say, in terms of if you win those cases. So it's a long drawn process, I would agree, but there is sure a light at the end of the tunnel.
I would like to add another point that if you are not commercializing that that IP right or the product. So it makes sense, send them at least a notice and ask them to come on the table, and maybe you can get a good licensing or a royalty deal. There's no harm in sending a notice letter which would not be costing you much. If at later stage you can decide whether you want to have resources or you have sufficient pocket to go into full-fledged litigation, but notice letter would not cost you much.
Okay. And there is one more, but if it is okay, we will make this the last question.
Yes, sir.
Because we're running short of time now. The question is there a short or rather less expensive option to patent for an MSME? Is there any cheaper option?
So MSMEs currently itself are getting quite a subsidy, whether it's with respect to patent filing or official fees. Secondly, you may approach the Ministry of MSME who provides support for patent grant and prosecution, some kind of a support if that helps. But otherwise, there is no other thing that you can have an alternative way of that.
I do not have that an article published by ASSOCHAM right now with me, but ASSOCHAM had published or collated all the information of the reimbursement of IP cost. So one or the other state or even in the center or the various department, they are reimbursing the cost. It is, again, I'm reiterating the fact, think long term, as Sumantra said, and also it is an investment. You invest today and you reap the benefit tomorrow. So try to get the exploit the government initiative benefits of reimbursement.
And just to add, Gautam, one point, because I do work with a lot of SMEs and startups in India as well. And my one word of advice would be that this is a very important right. So do not try to squeeze money in terms of, do not try to save cost while you are applying for, say, a patent. It is important that you get your right in terms of whatever you have, you're supposed to get protected. The problem is that if you do not have the right kind of people assisting you in that entire process, you might end up getting an IPR right which may not be of value to you. So please understand that, ensure that whosoever is assisting you or you're doing it yourself, make sure that not take it lightly and say that I just filed a patent, my job is done. No, that's not the thing. The quality of the patent also matters.
So with this, okay, sorry.
Yeah, I think we should stop here. Although there are two more questions that I see. Would you like? Okay, let's extend it by 2 minutes. One question is from Aditi Chavan. She asks whether issuing notice and not proceeding legally against an infringer amounts to acquiescence. It's a question. And there is another one. It says, as an individual, if I want to take grant certificate of my published patent, then what is the process, if you could explain? Would someone like to take it? Or maybe what we can do is we can circulate it around and then we'll try and get back to Aditi and Brahmadat, if that's okay. And the time also is 5:15. We have overshot by about 15 minutes. So I guess, Dr. Gautam?
You're on mute, Gautam.
The connection for a while. So,
okay.
Sorry, I had to reconnect. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll just, conclude here this session. And if you'd like to say a concluding remark, Mr. Gautam, Dr. Gautam.
So no, thank you First of all, let me congratulate Vicky and for convening this wonderful session. Thank you, Dipankar. Thank you, Vicky, once again. Thank you so much, Tamara, for joining from Geneva. Sumantra, Pearl, Lakshmi, thank you so much once again for your valuable comments. And let us conclude here with and thank you everyone from on behalf of all the panelists. Let me thank you for joining. Thank you all the audience.
Thank you.
Right. And thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya, for chairing and moderating this panel discussion on IP creation, protection, and commercialization by MSMEs. Again, a very pertinent subject matter and a growing need in India, particularly for Indian small and medium enterprises. To conclude, just a second. Well, as we come to the concluding part of this webinar, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to, on behalf of Vicky and all the participants, once again thank Mr. Narendra Sabarwal for his welcome address, Mr. Ratnu for his special address today, and Ms. Vijay Malkhani for her concluding remarks. Mr. Raghavendra and Mr. Chakravarti for very ably chairing the two panel discussions. And thank you to all the distinguished panelists, Mr. Uday Singh, Mr. Girish Luthra, Mr. John Kabeka, Mr. Sunit Kapoor for their insightful observations, and all the panelists of this last discussion. I also extend our sincere thanks to all the sponsors of the webinar for partnering with Vicky to conduct this webinar today. And of course, a very heartfelt thanks to all the participants for joining us today in such large numbers. We really hope you found the discussions useful and informative. And thank you all once again. And please take care and stay safe and healthy. The times are not really, really looking up yet. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.